like to go ahead and call this work session to order, and I will turn it over to Steve Stroud. Please take it away.
Thanks, Mayor. Tonight we are going to present the next findings. Next site is our partner with Retail Studies. It's a 3-year partnership that we've been working with Georgia Power. Next site works throughout the Southeast, and I've got their consultants here tonight, and they're going to speak to us. Andy Camp, and we appreciate you coming.
Yep, Chuck.
Chuck, oh yeah, Chuck first. Okay. You.
Good evening. Chuck Branch, I'm a CEO, managing partner of Next Site, and Andy Camp, who's our Vice President of Business Development, and works with all of our Georgia communities. Really appreciate the opportunity to come back over here and spend a few minutes with you. We're going to run through several components of our engagement with Roswell, Inc. Give you a quick background. We are partnered with Georgia Power. Some of you may remember that. We were very fortunate to have partnered with them to provide our services to communities throughout their service territory. Are there any Georgia Power people here? Yeah, they may be a few minutes late. And through that relationship is how we came to be involved with Steve and his group. We have spent the last 12 months adding capabilities to our research and market analysis. We've also added to both our research team and our client management team, which gives us more bodies to go out to conferences. When we were engaged with Roswell, and this continues to be our focus, it was to create a baseline for the city of Roswell. Where have you been, where are you today, and where are you going as it relates to retail development and redevelopment? And there's a lot of development and redevelopment occurring in Roswell. And so a lot of our function has been not only understanding the market analysis and some of the unique characteristics of the market, but it's then going out and connecting the dots between developers, tenant reps, existing property owners, and some of the organizations that have come in and purchased major properties within your community to redevelop. Support the focus areas in the strategic economic development plan, assist the organic growth of the existing retail and entrepreneurial opportunities. And so there's a key component to the research and market analysis that we do, and Steve's group is using this to support your existing businesses, but also to identify entrepreneurial opportunities. And one of the things that Steve and I were just talking about before the meeting started was the idea of possibly having some type of franchise development conference. There's a lot of franchise concepts that want to be in markets like Roswell. The unfortunate part of that is they need private investment. They need somebody that's willing to become that franchisee. And so we are currently working on one down in the Mississippi Gulf Coast, but could be engaged with Steve and his group to do one here in Roswell to help connect the dots between concepts that want to be in the market but need a franchisee and that investor who is looking to start a new business. Finally, how do you identify and support that entrepreneurial growth, specifically in the downtown quarter and on Canton Street? And again, back to what I just mentioned, but it's also identifying those unique concepts that have shown a propensity to locate in similar downtown areas in similar markets. And so a little bit later in the presentation, we're actually going to walk you through the process that we go through to identify those concepts that are coming into the Atlanta DMA, demographic marketing area, and identifying concepts that are not yet into the Southeast but are coming from places like Dallas, the upper Midwest, and the Atlantic coast, and opening locations in markets throughout the Atlanta area. So again, our partnership with Georgia Power led us to Roswell, Inc. And so we're very excited about the opportunity to continue providing the services that we've been engaged to provide the last couple of years. Our process, very unique research. We're going to get into some discussion a little bit later. When we were here last year, it was about tracking people's mobile devices. And again, that's anonymized. We're not tracking the mayor's phone and tell you where the mayor was last week or where Steve went shopping 2 weeks ago. But the ability to take that anonymized data and look at where people live, where they work, and where they were 2 hours before they went to a location to make a purchase. In the last 12 months, that data and that analysis has taken a huge leap forward. Now, not only can I tell you by taking the local grocery store like Kroger, where those people live, work, and were before 2 hours before I can now tell you the actual locations they were at before they went to the Kroger and the locations they left Kroger and went to afterwards. And so now we're getting to the point where we're tracking customer journey instead of just tracking mobile devices. Support the development and redevelopment. So through Steve's group, we're providing that analysis and referring opportunities as far as retail concepts and in some cases developers to them, but it's also about supporting those developers that are already in the market or coming into the market, i.e. redeveloping the Skillet property, working with others that are redeveloping properties throughout the city. Marketing and recruiting, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about how we go to different conferences and do outreach on behalf of Roswell from a marketing standpoint to identify those concepts and identify new developers and tenant reps and introduce them to the opportunities in Roswell. Finally, how do we affect positive change in the market? If you start at 1 o'clock, this is where our engagements start, but when we do updates, this is where it starts. So understanding the travel patterns, understanding customer journey, identifying trade areas. And trade areas are typically, people think, okay, we got one big trade area. No, really you have multiple trade areas based on which concept you're trying to recruit to the market. And so we'll create multiple trade areas for the market. We'll do on-demand analysis when Steve and his group have someone that's asking specific questions or needs different analysis than what we have provided to them. We're looking at dollars that are leaving the market, although, and we tell this to all of our clients in large metropolitan areas, it's tough to do leakage in a market like Roswell because you've got so many people coming into and out of the market through the contiguous high-end market areas. And so it's more about what's that demand component. What's the large amount of dollars being spent in the market and how do you take advantage of that? And then also tracking those consumers that are coming in from the contiguous metropolitan suburb areas. Peer analysis, we've taken peer analysis to another level. And that's back to not so much looking at the demographics of markets against each other, but looking at the propensity of retailers to locate in markets that look somewhat similar to each other. That creates our development targets and our retailer targets, and we pass those along to Steve and his group. We've identified certain focus properties. We've put together marketing materials on the 6 trade areas that we represent through the relationship. We go to the ICSC conferences. We'll talk a little bit about some additional conferences that we're now attending where we're identifying non-retail commercial development opportunities. And then when we're back in the office, we're following up with those entities that we've met with and providing them with the market analysis, making sure that we're connecting them to Steve's group, reaching out to new developers from outside the Atlanta metro area that are looking to do projects in Roswell, and then finally, tenant outreach. Most of the expanding tenants are working with groups like the shopping center group. They're working with groups like JLL out of out of Mobile, which has a large tenant representation list for the state of Georgia. All right, with that, I'm going to step aside for a minute, and Andy's going to talk about some of the trends that are occurring in retail.
Thank you, Chuck. So we're often asked what drives retail, and I always tell people whatever the retailers want to do. So this is a part of the presentation. We want to talk about a couple of things and point out a few reports and just extract a few things that we would encourage everybody to look a little bit deeper if they have curiosity to go a little further down in the weeds. There's a lot going on this slide, but we decided that we would just take some information that someone else had prepared here, so we're going to give credit to IHL. They're a research group that works with the retailers doing some digital engagement and other things like that, but they're tracking this industry in a way where they can deliver some very reliable, transparent information. So one of the things that we hear so much is, well, I thought all these big boxes and I thought all these other stores were closing, and there are a lot of headlines out there that would certainly lead everybody to believe that. But the reality is that there are actually quite a few stores increasing. So last year there were 675. This year so far we've got over 1,000 that are increasing the number of stores that they have. While chains are still closing, it's dropped dramatically, and we have almost 3,000 more openings than closings so far in 2019 per the research. A lot of these losses have been in, that you hear about have been in the department and the specialty store closures. We see a bullet point there that says that that was about 9,000, but all the other segments have added 18,000 to compensate for it during that period of time. This is where I tell people, you think of the interior part of a mall. That's been a very challenging place for a retailer to be. They're just not getting the same traffic that they used to in those C and D markets, or C and D malls. So we've seen a lot of losses in those areas as well, but they're still spinning out, and the things that work, they're trying to make work just outside of that footprint. We're at 5.2 chains opening for every one that was closing. Food, no surprise, we all have to eat. It's built-in sustainability, so we're seeing a lot of expansion in all food areas, whether that's convenience, grocery, or restaurants. And then we're seeing the things that work outside of malls very well are also expanding. And then the last thing is that a lot of the things that we see across CNBC or Wall Street Journal are going to be fundamental challenges that those businesses have, either too much debt, expanded too fast, or maybe the brand or the concept is just kind of sunset with people's tastes and it's no longer relevant. And they're either going to reinvent it or they're going to downsize to the right markets for them. The other thing we hear a lot of is the internet. The internet. Yes, it's there. Yes, it's growing. We're seeing a lot of sales come out of that. As a matter of fact, it's grown almost 3 to 4% just in the last couple of years for the e-commerce sales. And one real quick thing to point out, we do have, that number should actually be 86 billion. The percentages are correct. I'm not sure how that got fat-fingered, but just to point it out. But either way, we're looking at 13% of the total, which leaves us tons of space in bricks and mortar. And then when you're online pure play, so think of the Amazons of the world, it's still only 5% of that. Bricks and mortar online sales is where we're seeing a lot of growth from the internet. Anecdotally, I bought a TV in Walmart that I bought it on Walmart.com, not standing in the store. The deal was better. So I waited 10 minutes and then I went back to the counter and picked it up. So these are the types of things that are occurring even when you're physically in the store. And then I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background on a couple of the things that they pointed out in the previous slide. Those categories, just to give some examples. Of course, food and grocery are going to be fairly self-explanatory, but when we start talking about department stores, we're thinking of those things that typically end cap a mall. Especially soft goods, typically the things that were inside of it, and then especially hard goods, which was an area that was growing a lot, is your typical hardware stores, your big box, your Lowe's, your Home Depots, but it also includes the auto parts as well, and that's an area that we've seen pretty good bit of growth. And of course, restaurants, fast casual, table service, et cetera, all growing. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of those details as well. IHL has a full report. If you want to really get down into the weeds, I encourage you to go look at that. We wanted to hit a couple of high-level things real quick with that. Now I'm going to pass it back over to Chuck to talk about some other statistics in the community. Thank you.
George Power was nice enough to access their CoStar account. We would, but I don't see the need in spending $50,000 a year for a subscription just to know vacancy rates. But they were very nice to get this information for us. So in Q2 2011, vacancy peaked in the Roswell market at just over 16%. Q2 2019, that rate is down to just over, 6.5%. The Q2 2017 to Q2 2019 change, you've seen a decrease from 8.1 to 6.5. And a lot of this vacancy that we're seeing across the country is occurring in some restaurant concepts. You're seeing a lot of mom and pop type restaurant concepts that are going out of business. I think part of that is related to trying to find workers because compensation rates have gone up substantially. You're seeing back to some of those big box stores that are failing, not so much because of the consumer, but because of the merchandise that they're carrying in their stores and high debt loads that they can't cover. In most cases, we're seeing some of the bigger boxes converted to non-retail uses. And so we're not seeing a decrease as much as you would normally see in some of the junior boxes. Back to what Andy was talking about earlier too, about the expanding retailers. Right now, TJ Maxx, Ross, Hobby Lobby, Ulta, which are all in your market, are the ones that are most aggressively expanding right now. You know, Ulta just announced they're going to open 80 new stores in the next 12 months. TJ Maxx / Marshalls are looking to open a couple of hundred stores. And so it's difficult in backfilling existing box stores with new box stores simply because they're already in your market and there's no other big box stores being created. All right, let's talk a little bit about Roswell and specific markets. Parkway Village. And these numbers are Q1 2017 through Q1 2019. Population growth of over 2%, household growth over 2%, home values are increasing. These are the markets that retailers and specifically restaurant concepts and some of the more boutique chain fashion apparel are looking to move into, and grocery stores. And right now in the grocery business, it's grab whatever market share you can get as quickly as you can get it, and how do I cut my competition off from coming into a particular market. Downtown, where I know there's a lot of interest, Q1 17 to 19, 2.4 population growth, household growth happens to match it, and average home sale value or home value has gone up 18%. So significant growth in both of those markets. East Roswell, different story. Limited population growth and household growth, but still the same increase of just over 19% on average home value. And again, when you see those kind of low population growth numbers, it's going to indicate difficulty in recruiting retail. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Just a quick question. How do you define household growth? Is that
Just number of houses, yeah, residential homes.
Number of houses.
Right, but it could be multifamily, it could be single family. So it's simply number of residential units in 2019 versus 2017 in that quarter.
So how does that differ from population growth when you're looking at it?
You're going to have some markets where the average household number is 2.5 and some where it's 2.1. And so it's just based on census data that's being extrapolated out. We're using PopStats, which is a quarterly updated driven, and they base theirs on the number of postal codes that are coming online or going offline within a given geography. And again, it's just going to be based on average household size over a period of years. They're modeling that data based on the number of occupants historically, again, across different markets. Parkway Village. So again, this comes back to our ability to know where they're going before a target location that we've picked out to run our customer journey data. So their favorite places are the food court at Northport Mall, the Fresh Market, and Kohl's. Length of stay in Parkway Village, 533,000 estimated visits. They typically stay at that location for 41 minutes, and the peak time is between 2 and 4 p.m. Local trade area, balanced traffic patterns. Roswell Crossing is the most popular location prior to going to Parkway Village, and Stonebridge Square is the most popular location post a visit to Parkway Village. We've added one of the reports to the back of your handout on the customer journey to downtown. Steve and his group have the customer journeys for all of the other trade corridors. The historic district. Length of stay, 23% of the people who visit the historic district stay over 150 minutes. We're going to show you in just a moment how large the regional draw is to the historic district. 12%, 60 to 74, 11%, 75 to 89 minutes. And so for the most part, those people are coming, they're having dinner, they're having lunch, they're sticking around the historic district. Average stay is 117. Peak hours indicates that they're there a lot of the time for dinner and something afterwards or before, 6 to 9 p.m. Number of visits, you can see the percentage is 26% on Saturday, so this is a Thursday through Sunday driven location. 1.3 million estimated visits to the historic district over the last 12 months. Favorite places, I'll call it Antico, and hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Tico Pizza, thank you. City Market, TJ Maxx, Macy's, and Dick's Sporting Goods, again, are the favorite places.
So Chuck,
Yes.
let me interject. One of the pieces that's important to remember about favorite places is these are places that the consumer that's coming in, the 1.3 million visits coming into this historic district, are looking at besides. That doesn't mean the Roswell residents. That doesn't mean
Right.
that Mike and I are going to Antico Pizza or our next stop is TJ Maxx or a Sporting Goods. It means that that group that comes in here, their travel patterns are taking you to these kind of locations. So that makes it an ideal piece for that group that's shopping in Roswell.
And there are a lot more favorite places when you dig into the full report, but Steve is correct. Anybody who has visited, of those 1.3 million visitors to the historic district, those are their top favorite places. But there are many other favorite places that they've been to. We're just limited on space. East Roswell, the Kroger, favorite places, Centennial High School. And as we go into some of the additional data in just a moment, you'll recognize that East Roswell and that Kroger are a neighborhood-driven shopping location. So the fact that it's a grocery store and that the favorite places and the before and after all include Centennial High School typically means it's mom or dad taking them to drop them off and going by Kroger, or they're picking them up in the afternoon, or before they go pick them up, they're stopping by the grocery store. Home Depot, East Village. Length of stay, 502,000 visitors. Average stay is 32 minutes. God, I hope I never stay in a grocery store for 32 minutes. Peak time, 4 to 6. You've just picked them up, or you're going to pick up from athletics, and you're stopping by the Kroger before or after to pick up dinner. Sunday is the most popular day. Local trade area, east of 400, north of the river. Traffic moves south. We'll show you in just a moment how we can visualize that. And Centennial High School is, again, the most popular before and after location. So, digging further into Kroger, you can see this is tracking those mobile devices. This is a heat map. The top two, orange and red, are your largest traffic patterns. Location on the left is from work. So people that are coming to that Kroger after they've left work and headed home. But how we identify that it is primarily a neighborhood is look at the amount of heat map that's directly around the Kroger location. So that's also going to drive the conversation when we're talking to new to market restaurant concepts, that you've got a neighborhood draw in this area, and based on the demographics, this is what we believe. And then looking at taking those demographics and looking at the peer analysis, which of those restaurant concepts have shown a propensity to locate in small neighborhood trade areas that meet the demographics of East Roswell. A little bit harder to see on this one, but you can see that the red and the darker orange are those travel patterns. This is your travel patterns in the prior location. So a lot of that, when you go back to that previous, is their work location on that other mobile map. So this is people traveling back into the market from work. And then you can see post location, this is where they're all going to those residential units in that neighborhood market.
Quick question, how old is all this mobile data? How old is this mobile data?
It's done for the last 12 months. It's a rolling 12-month period.
12 months?
Yeah. Now we can break it down.
In East Roswell is from 12 months ago?
It's all 12 months.
Okay.
So a month from now, if you came to me, we'd drop the longest month and pick up the most recent. But we can cut it down to a month, a quarter. We can do it for a time period. We can do it for time of day. All right, so Parkway Village. This is a very interesting capability that was just added in the last couple of weeks. 80% of the visitors live within 5 miles. Back to that neighborhood concept that you're going to draw traffic locally. What concepts work that are going to be impacted by people going to and from that location. Roswell downtown, 80% of your visitors live within 30 miles. I'll point out that about 70% of those are within 10, but you're picking up another 10% of people that are coming in from these contiguous markets. And that probably lends itself too to some of the events that you're having throughout the year, and people are coming in from these areas outside of Roswell. And then East Roswell, back to again the neighborhood concept, which gets even tighter for the Kroger. 80% of your visitors live within 2 miles. We talked about our marketing efforts. mainly through ICSC. We started going to Center Build, which is more shopping center related. We went to Retail Live this year down in Orlando, which is more retail concept driven. In the last couple of months, we've been to 2 lodging conferences. The one that's of most interest to Roswell is the Southern Lodging Conference in Memphis. We went about 3 weeks ago. We have now met with IHG, Hilton, and Marriott. We know where they want to put their hotels and what brands and what concepts. We'll be sending Steve and his group an update. We know that there are additional hotel concepts from those 3 brands that are interested in the Roswell market.
So one thing to interrupt for just a second for Chuck that's very, very important. We always talk about hotels and the importance of the hotels and the return on investment to the city of Roswell. Well, with Georgia Power, again, we partnered to do 2.0 on the hotel feasibility study. That's what led us to the 4 hotels that are being built right now. And with this effort here, we can actually go market and attract the right kind of hotels to fill those spots. So it's one thing to have the feasibility study that says we need the room nights, but it's another thing to have the feasibility study and then also be tracking those same hotelier groups to bring them in.
And most of the ones, the majority of the ones that are interested in Roswell are going to be your boutique concepts. So they're not going to be the large, big brands that you see that are sort of conference and convention related. It's going to be boutique, smaller 80 to 100 room concepts. So I talked about new peer analysis. So we now have the capability. We built this functionality internally at Next Site. But we went in and we took, and this is a very short list, but we took all of the cities in the demographic marketing area, which is bigger than a metropolitan area, and we said, okay, run it for the 252 restaurant concepts that have a location somewhere in the Atlanta metro area. Now they might have 1, they might have 15, they might have 50. What we have started doing, and I'm throwing up a few of the ideas, this list extends down the hallway. But these are concepts that have shown a propensity to locate in some of the metropolitan Atlanta suburbs, but are not in Roswell, or if they are in Roswell, we believe they warrant a second location. So for example, Chicken Salad Chick is in Roswell. So this is measured from downtown, those distances. This is the number of miles to the next nearest location. So there's a Roswell Chicken Salad Chick in northeast Roswell. We believe that there's an opportunity in northwest Roswell. There's an opportunity in southeast Roswell. The rest of them are concepts that are in contiguous areas that we believe warrant consideration and outreach, both from us and Steve's group and Roswell Inc. For potential locations in the market. But again, there's probably rough count of about 45 to 50 of these concepts that we have targeted and will continue to target. Some of them are new to market concepts. And some of them will have certain restrictions. BurgerFi, for example, wants to be right off the interstate. They got a traffic count that they demand be met. And so not everything's going to work in Roswell, but there's a lot of these concepts that will work in Roswell. So, what have we been doing for the first 2 years, and as we enter the 3rd year? A lot of information sharing to Steve and Roswell Inc., market analysis, contacts, insight, supporting the existing local businesses that are interested in knowing the information to understand what product and service offerings they can add to their existing offerings, or to support understanding the market trade area for their particular concept. I think my wife used to have a boys' clothing store, and I'm in this business, and I had a hard time convincing her that her customers were coming from a larger distance than what she expected. And so through that customer journey, had it been around 15 years ago, you would have been able to identify how far people were coming in. That's going to impact your marketing, particularly through social media. Today's environment allows you to go to a social media consultant and say, okay, I want to target people in these certain areas that I see are coming into downtown Roswell, for example. And so I can target my marketing, but it's also an opportunity to identify additional products and service offerings. Support the entrepreneurial growth that we talked about earlier, assisting existing property owners, We've had several conversations with some of the larger property owners, multiple property owners throughout the city of Roswell, and through Steve's group have gotten connected to provide all of this market analysis to them for their specific location. And really at the end of the day, it's all about positioning Roswell for private investment. Whether it's a new developer coming into the market to redevelop a new old property or to develop a new property, or it's positioning it for franchise development. Property owner and broker outreach, again, similar to reaching out to the developers, the tenant reps. And then finally, S.J. Collins and Tidewater are two specific examples, and I'm going to turn it over to Andy to talk about Tidewater. S.J. Collins, I'll mention, was the winner of the RFP for the Skillet property, and so prior to, we had been working with Steve and his group about market analysis specific to the Skillet property area. And then once they became the winner of the RFP, we have set up a base camp account and shared specific information to assist their redevelopment efforts.
No, and that additionally included some mapping and some other things that they could utilize to go out and try to target some specific programming for the Skillet property to be redeveloped in the way that the RFP was awarded. Or I guess that's the correct way of saying it. Close enough. Tidewater's an interesting one. It's a little, they own a smaller standalone old restaurant in East Roswell. And we've been looking at, as Chuck mentioned earlier, what are some second locations that might work in addition to some new to market things. Good accomplished group of developers that are looking to really to redevelop that piece of property if they have to, but they obviously would like to put somebody in it if it works in its current programming. It's going to be on the going home side, so it makes it a little more challenging for some of the maybe coffee and donut things that we feel like might have been a little bit of an easier pull to that location. In addition to that, we are helping them by giving them the information that we showed you earlier with Kroger, where some things that people might be crossing the interstate for that may just not be as convenient. I shouldn't say interstate, using 400. And then what will that look like when some other infrastructure comes online, and it may be something where anything that's a little closer to that interchange might not be as well positioned. So maybe something that can go ahead and make that move now and avoid that loss, if that would ever be the case. I don't believe there's a lot of standalone retail between the road near Kimberly Clark. Yeah. So it's mostly office stuff, if I'm remembering correctly. So, but those are ways that we just help connect the dots. But mostly it's about getting everyone in touch with Steve and the team at Roswell Inc., having the horsepower that we have as well. So everybody's on the same sheet of music, looking at what the opportunities are, so we're not missing any chance to land or expand and help that business thrive in the community.
Seeing a lot of groups like Tidewater come into markets like Roswell and purchase existing locations that may or may not be for sale, and typically trying to do either a standalone restaurant concept or a 2 or 3 tenant strip concept. Let's go back. I'll answer questions.
Comments, questions from council?
Go to page 9 if you would a second. I'll make sure
Which one?
Page 9.
You have to tell me page 9 is...
Triangles are on it.
I got it.
One more. There you go. That's it, right there. I'll make sure I understand what I'm looking at. So first of all, apparently, if I look at the value of homes, Roswell is apparently a great place to live.
A lot of places have been a great place to live, but yes, Roswell's been very good. In fact, that's a 25% increase, almost, well, 20% increase in the valuation.
So make sure I understand what you put together here. If I'm a mom and pop restaurant.
Yep.
I'm really like the idea of the fact that East Roswell has that neighborhood traffic pattern.
Right.
Okay. But then I look down here and I see population growth is less than 0.5%.
Correct.
And household growth right about 0.5%. Does that tells me then that I have to take share versus share in a larger piece of the pie? So does that make it harder to get in there or to get someone to go there?
Harder, strong, I would say, is more of a sales job. But yes, to answer your question, most of the time when we're talking to a developer or a tenant rep or even a specific retailer, one of their first questions is, what's the growth of the market look like? On the other hand, if there is a gap in that particular market for what I would call neighborhood restaurant concepts, it may not be so much pulling traffic away from them, but it's keeping people at home that may be going to other areas to eat.
Okay.
And so that comes back to, we can now do customer journey and show where those people are going to different restaurant concepts or to different other shopping locations.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at the charts of the Parkway Village and the East Roswell Kroger, the 2% and the 5%, 2 miles and 5 miles.
Yep.
When you're looking at that and you saw and you said earlier that, you've got the Target, which is very popular at the 5 miles, and then you have the 2 miles over here at the Kroger, which was near the old Target, which obviously didn't make it.
Right.
Is the 3 miles that big of a difference, or is it the traffic pattern around, or the growth in the market that continues that would make the difference in that situation?
I think it's the target audience. Target meaning target, not the actual store concept. So I think that those people were willing to drive to other locations, but the size of that market is not as large, and so you're not going to see such a large impact as far as the distance they had to travel. The other side of that is typically Targets across the country are drawing from a larger regional trade area. And so when you have a Target where you have a neighborhood like this one that's not drawing a lot of traffic from outside, as we can show from the customer journey and the mobile mapping analysis, it's going to be difficult for a large big box like that to make the numbers to be economically viable.
Can I add something to that real quick? So the number of visits are very similar to the grocery store and the Target. Of course, the center would expand the number of visits because the Target center is so much larger than the Kroger center. So there's an incredible amount of loyalty to that area with that 2 mile, give or take, trade area. But then also you got some big geographic boundaries to the south.
The river.
You just can't cross
Right.
the river. Yeah. So there are a couple other little things that factor into it as well. But they both appear to be very viable. They're just,
Bless you.
Well, thank you.
they're just very different. God just made the earth very different.
Sure.
So, and we've got a pipe that leads people in a lot of different directions. You saw that balanced traffic pattern that we were talking about when we was driving Parkway a little earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I question just about other factors that influence, retail viability, such as the actual number of households, and then things like demographics, economics, and age, things
Correct.
like that. How do those figure in? And do you have that for each of these areas?
For every one of the 6 trade corridors that we focused on, we have a complete demographic profile, including segmentation data. How many people are retirees? How many people are millennials? How many people have young children at home? How many people are empty nesters? We've done all the demographic analysis, which is where a lot of this trend information is coming from. We've looked at the leakage data, which becomes more of a demand driver instead of a gap. In most of these areas we've done, in addition to creating a custom trade area, which we draw the boundary and then create the demographic report, we've also done radius and drive time analysis. So we are slicing and dicing every one of these locations or trade corridors multiple ways. And so through our base camp account access that Steve and his team have, they've got the full demographic profile of every community. But you're correct, demographics are going to drive it: income, population, growth, number of kids. If you go back and look at, make sure I get to the right one. It's at Parkway Village. I think that's the right one. Sorry. East Roswell with the Kroger. Remember, we talked about Centennial High School. If you look at a lot of neighborhood grocery-driven or neighborhood-driven retail locations, there's usually some kind of school involved or multiple school locations involved within proximity to that grocery store.
One thing to add to that, not only is grocery store the key anchor for some key investor groups, but restaurants. A successful shopping center has at least 5 minimum, depending on the size, restaurants. That's counter service. That's Chicken Salad Chick. That's Zoe's. You know, look at the successful shopping centers in the Parkway Village, and you will go see as many as 7 restaurants, including an Outback, in one shopping center. It brings people in next to the high school, and that's a real important factor to key in on.
We all have to eat. We can't get away from it.
It's not
It's
Amazon.
a good thing.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Customer travel patterns. One question that I know your daddy can answer, so maybe you could send it back through Steve. What kind of leakage do we see, again, over in the east side of Roswell, going out the old Alabama Road connector?
Okay. So that's what, in fact, we got this capability about 2.5, 3 months ago. So we've updated all of our existing trade corridors. The next thing is to go look at the traffic drivers that are in the contiguous areas around Roswell to see where Roswell consumers are coming from and going to those particular locations. So yes, when that's completed, typically takes a couple of weeks, we'll get that information over to Steve. And we're going to do it for entertainment concepts also, because we've had several entertainment concept discussions that would be fill in the hole and see how many people are driving to the competitor locations in these contiguous markets.
Additional questions, comments from council? Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward and speak? Quiet crowd. Well, thank you all very much. This is great information to have, and I'm assuming if we have additional questions later that we can get in touch with Steve Stroud, and because I'm sure this will spur a lot of additional questions and thoughts later on. So thank you again.
And a lot of interest. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much for your
Appreciate it.
hard work. We are adjourned.